DC Death vs Marvel Death, who would win? Two universes. Two embodiments of the inevitable. Two forces that no hero, no god, no cosmic being can escape. One is calm, kind, and walks beside you at the end. The other is silent, distant, and waits for everything to fall into her grasp. This is not just a battle. This is death versus death. And by the end of this video, you'll know which one truly rules the end of everything. The nature of DC Death. In the DC universe, Death is not a monster. She doesn't chase you. She doesn't hunt you. She greets you. DC Death, one of the endless, is older than gods, older than time, older than reality itself. She exists as a fundamental concept of existence. When life begins, she is there. And when life ends, she is waiting. But here's what makes her truly terrifying. She doesn't just exist within the universe. She exists beyond it. Even if the entire multiverse collapses, even if time itself stops, even if reality is erased, Death remains. She is not bound by rules. She is the rule. And according to DC lore, when the last living thing finally dies, she will close the universe, and turn off the lights. That means one thing. She is the final being. The last presence. The absolute end. But what truly sets her apart is not just her power, but her perspective. She understands every life, every story, every moment that leads to the end. She doesn't judge. She doesn't punish. She simply acknowledges. And in that quiet understanding, lies a different kind of power. A power not built on destruction, but on certainty. Because no matter how chaotic existence becomes, no matter how many times reality is rewritten, her role never changes. She will always be there. At the first breath. And at the final goodbye. The power of Marvel Mistress Death. Now step into the Marvel Universe, where death is not a guide, but a force. Mistress Death is the embodiment of death itself across the Marvel multiverse. She is not emotional. She is not kind. She is not cruel. She simply is. She doesn't walk beside life. She stands at the end of it. Even beings like Thanos, one of the most powerful entities in Marvel history, devoted everything to her. Destroyed worlds. Wiped out half the universe. All for her attention. But here's the truth. She was never impressed. Because to Mistress Death, everything dies eventually. Gods, celestials, abstract beings, even cosmic entities fall under her domain. She doesn't need to fight. She doesn't need to prove power. Because every victory, every war, every universe ends with her. She is the void that waits when everything else is gone. And what makes her even more terrifying is that she is not bound by morality, balance, or purpose. She does not maintain order. She does not protect existence. She does not care if creation thrives, or collapses. To her, all outcomes lead to the same destination. Silence. And no matter how powerful a being becomes, no matter how many realities they conquer, they are all moving toward her. Not as an enemy. Not as a challenge. But as an inevitability that cannot be rewritten. Because in the Marvel Universe, death is not just the end of the story. She is the reason every story ends. Power, scaling, and the real difference. Now here's where things get serious. Both DC Death and Mistress Death exist beyond physical form. Both are conceptual entities. Both are tied to the very fabric of existence. So how do you compare two beings who cannot be touched, cannot be harmed, and cannot be destroyed? You look at their roles. DC Death is deeply connected to existence itself. She is part of a cosmic system, one of the endless, representing universal truths like dream, destiny, and desire. She is beyond gods, beyond multiversal destruction, and even beyond time. But she is still a function of existence. A role that continues as long as existence continues. Mistress Death, on the other hand, is something colder. More absolute. She is not part of a system. She is the outcome of everything. While DC Death guides souls, Mistress Death claims them. While DC Death exists alongside life, Mistress Death exists after it. And that difference changes everything. Because one represents the journey's end, and the other represents what comes after the end. But let's go even deeper. DC Death has shown compassion, interaction, and presence. She can appear, communicate, and be experienced by those whose time has come. She is aware, but also connected. She exists with meaning. Mistress Death, however, is detached from all of that. She rarely manifests. She rarely speaks. And when she does, it is never out of emotion. It is inevitability taking form. Even the most powerful beings in Marvel, from cosmic abstracts to universe-level entities, do not challenge her authority. They submit to it. Because her power is not measured in destruction, energy, or scale. It is measured in certainty. You can fight a god. You can resist fate. You can even break reality. But you cannot stop the end. And Mistress Death is not just part of that end. She is what remains when everything else has failed. That is the true difference. Not power. Not scale. But finality. Final verdict, who is the true death? So, who wins? DC Death, or Mistress Death? The answer is not simple. But it is clear. DC Death is powerful beyond imagination. She transcends gods, survives the end of universes, and stands as the final presence within her reality. But Mistress Death is not just the end of a universe. She is the end of all things, without exception. She does not guide. She does not wait. She does not care. She simply remains, when nothing else does. And that gives her the edge. Because in a true, absolute sense, even the concept of death must eventually face the void. Final winner. Mistress Death. Because at the end of everything, there is no light, no guide, no comfort, only silence. And she is that silence. But here's the terrifying truth most people don't realize. DC Death may walk beside you, may smile at you, may hold your hand when your story ends. But Mistress Death doesn't walk beside anyone. She doesn't need to. Because by the time you reach her, there is no you left. No identity. No memory. No existence to hold on to. Only the absence of everything you once were. And that's what makes her truly unstoppable. Because you can face death. You can accept death. But you cannot escape what comes after it. And in that final moment, when even death itself has nothing left to guide, there is only one thing waiting. Not a being. Not a presence. But an absolute. A void that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be delayed, cannot be denied. And that is Mistress Death. The final silence. The final truth. The final end. Check out my other videos for more epic character crossovers and battles. Thanks for watching, and stay happy and healthy.